Oh my god, I didn't press go live.
Oh
Oh
no.
my god, I'm so sorry.
It's all good, man. I've done that more than
Oh
once
my
too.
god.
It's no problem.
Okay, so the question is, should I start over? Um, Hey, so I just realized that I was streaming, but I didn't press the go live button on my YouTube. A little bit distracted because I do have a guest this time for the first time. So sorry about that. We were just talking for 10 minutes. That's very awkward. But anyway, welcome again to episode 32 of Nightmare Theater, an open book club for nightmares. If you're new here, we read nightmares every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, especially when we remember to hit the go live button. If you would like your nightmare read, you can go to theforgottengrove at gmail.com, send an email to that address, and we'll read it. Next week I'll read it, or at the end of the stream if there's time. So sorry that, we'll have to start over, especially apologies to my guest. But my guest tonight is Serafin the Midnight Bard. He has an incredible YouTube channel where he reads horror stories. He cultivates these incredible vibes, and I really recommend you check it out if you're not already familiar with him. So welcome, Serafin, for the second time.
Sure, happy to be here.
All right. So if you wouldn't mind, what I asked Serafin 10 minutes ago was, what is the scariest nightmare you've ever had? And then he went ahead and told me this amazing story. So if you would please recall that nightmare once again for me, Serafin.
Sure, 100% happy to. So, I was probably about 7 years old whenever I had this nightmare. I was in a dark, dark, and I say again, the hellscape is really the only way to describe it. It's almost like if you've ever seen in cartoons or in movies, whenever somebody's standing inside of a volcano, the ground around me is charred black, but there's these cracks in it, and there's a red underglow from beneath. So as I'm looking around, I'm kind of just looking for something, for anything really. And there comes a point where I just decide there's nothing here. So the moment I tell myself that there isn't anything there, this giant arm just shoves its way very, very chaotically from underneath the ground. And to me, at glance, it looked like just an old, gnarled, dying tree. It's got all the features, the withered look. It looked super dry, almost. And now that I think about it, almost as if it was a tree that had been set on fire, and now it's just ashes and carbon just kind of falling off of it. So it slams down, and then a second one shoots up, and it slams down, and then this humanoid-looking creature kind of pushes itself up from underneath the ground. And as it pushes itself up, the ground around me starts to fall away. And basically, what ends up happening is all of the ground falls away until there's just this narrow land bridge. And I'm standing on it, and the creature's on one end, and I don't know what's the other end, but as I'm looking at this thing looks just angry and demonic and furious, and I'm thinking to myself, I can't stay here because it clearly sees me, and I really rather be anywhere but here. So I take off running in the opposite direction, and this thing starts chasing after, and it's just smashing away at all of the ground that it comes across so that it falls away. And so I'm running, and this thing's huge. So it's chasing after me, and it's taking more and more ground away as I'm running, and I'm screaming, I'm running for my life. There comes a point where there's no more land for me to run on. And whenever I get to the point, I just kind of fall away, and everything goes black. I wake up, and my parents were actually there. They were just kind of like looking over at me with this look of concern on their faces. And the moment they see that I'm conscious, they kind of like look at each other and just kind of share this look like, what just happened? But yeah, that's the most vivid, most impactful nightmare I've ever had.
Yeah, that's incredible. Once again, and I mentioned that for you to have woken up screaming suggests that it was actually a night terror, which is something
Hmm.
that you'll have in deep sleep rather than REM sleep. Because in REM sleep, you have atonia, which is your brain's way of shutting your body's ability to move down, and so you can't move or talk. So often with sleepwalking and night terrors, these are things that happen in deep sleep, and they're things that happen in childhood more frequently, and you'll often grow out of them. But once again, I'll ask you, for the audience, what do you think that that creature in your nightmare represented?
So I grew up in a very religious household. I was raised for a long time by my grandmother, who was, who very devout, churchgoer and everything. So just based off of everything that she raised me on, whenever I tried to ascribe a name to this thing, all I could think about was that was the devil. There's no question about it. It lives in a fiery, barren hellscape, and it's chasing me. So clearly, it's evil. It looks like what I think a devil would look like, and yeah, that's what it to me represented.
I like this suggestion in the comments. I think it's bleeding. It's a bleeding world over in a parallel dimension. Hopefully not.
Yeah, that's not a dimension I want to go back to. No.
Yeah, no. And you also mentioned to me just before we started that you had some COVID nightmares as well, or one
I
COVID
did.
nightmare at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to share that real quick?
Sure, and my COVID nightmare wasn't nearly as terrifying as this one, but
Right.
remember the one that I had was I was in a store, and I had gotten everything I needed. I was about to head out, but every time for the door, somebody would show up and just slam it shut, and then tell me that I couldn't leave. And it happened like multiple times. So they would tell me I couldn't leave, so I would go back inside, but then I'd say, this is foolish, so I'm gonna leave. And I would try again, and somebody would slam the door again. So it was always like the door would open the moment I turned around and walked away, but when I would come back to it, they would close it. So it was just kind of this really weird feeling of you're trapped and you can't go anywhere, you know?
Yeah, definitely a quintessential lockdown nightmare right there. But now I'd like to read some of these nightmares from Reddit/the audience, and I'm going to.
Awesome.
The way we're going to do this is I'm going to read the first nightmare. We're going to react to it for a bit, and then Serafin will read the second nightmare. We'll react to it for a bit, and then we'll just proceed from there. And at the end of tonight's stream, I do have also a viewer submission from last week that I didn't get to. So without further ado, this is a nightmare. It's a post by a user named Iceberg Kenny. The post is titled, "The Most Disturbing Dream I've Ever Had." The post reads, "This morning I woke up in a cold sweat because of the dream I had just started out with someone very close to me acting cold and distant to everyone. Stuff like that kept happening until eventually I woke up in the dream with a terrible feeling and went upstairs to a bathroom only to find a mixture of blood and urine on the floor. It looked like if a fertilized egg was cracked and spilled on the floor, and then find someone I love dearly laying in the bathtub with their wrists cut. There wasn't that much blood in the tub, so the last thing I remember is holding them and trying to stop the bleeding with toilet paper while screaming for someone to call an ambulance. I immediately woke up and held a blanket they gave me in real life and started texting them. It was one of the worst dreams of my life, and I don't know how to deal with it. This was this morning, as this post was made." Alright, so I really enjoyed that one. It's almost like they imagined exactly how it would go down if somebody sort of laid an egg. Yeah, and they didn't have the physiology to do it. But the fact that it is, I think that they mentioned that it was like a family member, right?
It was a loved one, they said.
Yeah, loved one. So, I mean, normally a nightmare like that, where you are, imagining your loved one having something, nasty happen to them, even if it's something as bizarre as them laying an egg, I would suggest to the poster that this indicates that they feel that their loved one, maybe they just have an urge to reconnect with the loved one, or it's possible that they have a loved one that's maybe going through a medical, like a tough time medically right now, and sort of the laying the egg represents that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually kind of where I was too. I was actually thinking that this is probably them kind of picturing their loved one going through some hard times, because just the impossibility of a person laying an egg, it just kind of suggests to me that they're going through some things that they couldn't have predicted, or that are really unorthodox, really difficult to deal with.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I like that little skew on it as well. Would you like to read nightmare number 2?
Sure. Let me see here. This comes from Flat Interests 7357. They say, weirdest nightmare ever. I woke up from this nightmare literally less than 2 minutes ago. I've had nightmares like this before, but this time it felt more intense. I fell asleep feeling fine. I wasn't even tired, I just had to sleep for the morning. As I was falling asleep, I felt really heavy, and almost like I was being pulled down into the bed. In the dream, it didn't make much sense at all. I was in my current bedroom, but none of my current items. It was all my childhood things. The dream was very, very fast, but felt like it went on hours. I was only asleep for give or take 10 minutes. In the dream, I was aware of what was happening. I was aware that what was happening was paranormal, yet I could grab the ghost. It was immediate. I'm not sure what led up to this. All I can remember is being grabbed by some woman. She was trying to strangle me from behind, so I never saw her face, only her arms, and I could feel the strength she had over me. I was screaming from my mother and my boyfriend and in convulsions crying. I remember breaking free from her grip many times and running to the door to escape, but always ending right back to being strangled. I fought extremely hard away from her, but it continued. For some strange reason, a horrifying version of Jingle Bells was playing in the background. No words, just an extremely sped version of the music. The whole dream was a constant rush. It felt like a horror movie played in extreme speed. I remember in the dream little moments where I'm actually asleep and I'm rubbing my eyes trying to wake up. I remember almost prying my eyes open, but then being forced back shut. I knew it was a dream, and I tried to escape, but physically I couldn't leave. My screams started to become more faint. I was screaming at the top of my lungs for help, but it came out more and more strained, like a whisper near the end. Then I suddenly woke up in a panic with a headache, and my neck was extremely warm and tense. This nightmare was extremely terrifying, and I woke up in a sweat. Is this sleep paralysis?
I mean, my first thought is that it's a lucid nightmare. Because
right.
They're describing it as being like you're aware that it's a nightmare, but you can't get out. And those can be
right.
More terrifying than a nightmare where you don't know it's a nightmare, oftentimes, because like you're almost worried about it on a mechanical level, like on a meta level. Like, why can't I wake up from the nightmare? You're worried about it.
Yes.
Yeah, like from just a whole other dimension. And there are other things that can happen in a lucid nightmare as well, like you can have a reality check, which is something where your brain tells you that what you're in is a dream, but then it will use that against you. So, for example, one of the classic examples I like to give is, say that you are a seasoned lucid dreamer, and you know that when you flick the lights on in a dream and they don't turn on, that you're in a dream. Well, your subconscious knows that you're using that as a reality check, and it can have it so that you flick the lights on and they do go on, so you think you're in real life. Like this, all kinds of crazy things can happen in a lucid nightmare that make them more terrifying than a regular nightmare.
Agreed. Yes, and I think I've heard somewhere in the past that whenever you're a lucid dreamer, you gotta keep your cool at all points, because if you feel like you start to lose control whenever things start going south, whenever you start going into nightmare territory, it can get really intense, because now you're dealing with the horrifying implications of what's happening in the nightmare, but also with the loss of control of your dream, you know? So...
Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely say not sleep paralysis to answer her question.
Yeah. Absolutely. You have to be a little, what's it called? A little aware in order for it to be sleep paralysis, right? Like you have to be awake to some degree, just incapable of moving, right?
Yes, technically sleep paralysis happens between sleep and wakefulness in what's called the hypnagogic state. So you would be seeing your room, certainly. It wouldn't be the bus or wherever she said she was. Yeah, or wherever you're asleep is where you'd be seeing it, basically. But moving on to nightmare number 3.
Okay.
This is a post by a user named SF-O-Matic. The post is titled, Nightmare That Sticks With Me for More Than 10 Years Later. The post reads, About 10 years ago, I had a nightmare that was so effing scary. I still shudder about it to this day. In the nightmare, I was riding on a bus. All of the other passengers had something very wrong with them. Facial deformities, missing eyes, etc. All of them gave off a creepy vibe. I asked the bus driver where we're headed, but before he could answer, the bus careened off a bridge and hit the water. I was underwater trying to hold my breath, then realized I was going to drown. At the time, I'd been working on lucid dreaming, so I tried to tell myself, this is just a dream. But the voice in my head just said, if you die in the dream, you'll die in real life. I jolted awake in my bed, terrified. I walked into the bathroom, and, as I was looking at the mirror, hands came up out of the floor and started trying to pull me back down through a large hole in the floor and into the water. I woke up for real that time, and was actually unsure if I was really awake, or if it was just another dream layer. I still think about it today. So what were we just talking about? About how, a lucid dream can be more terrifying. And this is actually, I think, a pretty good example of a false reality check. Because
that's right.
They're aware that it's a nightmare, and then their subconscious is like, yeah, it's a nightmare, but you're gonna still die. Like the subconscious is just gonna make it terrifying however it wants to, if it wants to torment you. So yeah, there's no escaping from it.
Sure.
And then the other sorry.
Oh, nothing. I was going to say Liam in the chat had a really funny thing to say. He says, oh, that just sounds like the bus as usual.
Yeah, people with deformities, missing eyes, etc. Yeah, that's true. The other comment that I had about the nightmare, though, is just the fact that it's a false awakening. Just wanted to point that out. So basically, because not everybody's read as much about nightmares as I have over here, but basically, anytime that you wake up in a nightmare and you're convinced that you're waking up for real, and then it turns out, no, this is actually part of the nightmare, that's called a false awakening. And you can actually have those loop, infinitely, especially...
that'd be the worst.
Yeah, I've heard of people coming off of anesthetics, general anesthetics, and they'll experience, this is rare, but in some cases they'll experience 1,000 or hundreds of false awakenings while coming out.
Oh man.
Yeah, and you think you're waking up, nope, still in the dream. So yeah, that's not fun for sure.
No, I had to go into surgery a while ago, and the anesthetic they gave me, for the most part, left me awake until the end of it, which is when I finally knocked out. But Luckily, I mean, for me, that was just completely silent dreaming. You know, there was nothing going on. So when I woke up, it was almost as if I'd come back from a void. You know, there was no dreams, no anything. I can't imagine trying to come out of like a nightmare in that state, and you just can't do it. That would be terrifying.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
Would you like to take a crack at reading the username there for nightmare number 4?
Sure. Let's see. Use nightmare number 4. V by S, VCL, PC, and VK. And they say, disturbing decapitation dream that scared me more the second time around. So it reads, I remember having
Oh, hang on for a second. Sorry, I'm seeing a lot of comments saying they can't hear you all of a sudden. Okay. This moment. Not really sure what changed, so can you say something for a second? Oh, I might have accidentally turned your volume way down. How about now? Can you hear him now? I don't know how I did that. I'm sorry.
Can you guys hear me now? Am I coming in clear?
Okay. Can you...
Nope.
Well, there's a delay, so we won't know for a few seconds.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I see yes now.
Okay, perfect. So what was the last thing you guys remember me saying?
Sorry about this, guys. I'm new to doing this with another individual.
This is the learning episode.
Yeah. All right. So this, just to clarify, this was a post by V by SVCLPZNVK. The post is titled "Disturbing Decapitation Dream That Scared Me More the Second Time Around." And
Okay, so the username is the last thing that they heard.
okay. All right. So
Okay.
I'm sorry to make you do this again, but yeah.
No worries, I'm happy to. Let me take it from the top.
All right.
Here we go. I remember having this dream before. Or a version of it, but both revolved around me singing happy birthday to a video camera after I decapitated myself and was slowly dying. The first time, I think I might have dreamt I was some character and not myself, though I can't remember who. All I remember is thinking to myself, hey, they'll definitely like this. I don't remember who they were, but apparently, they must have had some majorly macabre tastes. So I went about practicing to sing without my head, however one does that, for a painful amount of time. Then I set up the camera, cut my neck, and rasped through the song from my bleeding stump as my severed head slowly lost consciousness. I could feel light lightheadedness, the pressure that comes from not being able to breathe. I could feel my lack of blood flow. Then, I think I woke up and then forgot about it. Until last night. Last night, I dreamt I watched the recording. Except it wasn't some character doing this deplorable thing. It was me. I watched the whole tape through. Each bloody, gurgling syllable of that damned song. My eyes slowly fading out. My body trying its best to finish. And then I woke up again. And I was in near full-blown panic. How could I dream of something so awful? How could I think about doing something like that to myself? Why would I be so eager to end my life in such a gruesome manner over something so asinine? And perhaps the thing that frightens me the most was what's honestly making me a little scared to go to sleep now is that really what it's like to die?
That is a really good one. It was important for the audience to hear that one.
That's I remember, like, as soon as I got the paragraph the first time, I was like, holy cow, that is wow.
Yeah. So this reminds me of a lot of stuff. I mean, first of all, like, I'll start with the interpretation. It kind of sounds like maybe you do feel like you're putting more effort into maybe your friendships or like relationships than you're getting in return. Like, I'm talking to the nightmare haver, of course.
Right.
Yeah, because they feel like cutting off their head to sing happy birthday. So essentially they're, just putting out way more effort than they really should be, or going above and beyond when it's not really appropriate, to put it mildly. Yeah. And
that's a terrifying one, man. In my head, I think I kind of agree with you in regards to this is definitely like an idea of like really putting a lot of effort to like into friendships or into a lot of things that you're kind of wondering if like how far you're going, like how much am I hurting myself for the sake of continuing this relationship and things like that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that creeped me out about the nightmare, is I'm not sure if what they're saying is that they had it multiple times, but they didn't actually remember having the nightmare all those multiple times until they had this follow-up nightmare where they actually saw the tape of it. And that was a really creepy thought to me. I'm not sure, again, if that's what they're saying, but yeah. And then... Sorry.
I think just one time would have been terrifying to me. I mean, because like just the imagery and all that, it's just like, oh, cow.
Yeah, beautifully written.
Yeah. Yeah, beautifully indeed, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'll move along to nightmare number 5 now.
Okay.
This is a post by a user named Demons. It's me, ya boy. The post is titled.
I love it.
Yeah. The post is titled, "Really Weird, Messed Up, Reoccurring Dream." The post reads, "So this one is a bit of a reoccurring one. I don't have it very often, but it's happened every few years since I was a kid, and I always forget about it until I have the dream again. It's always at least slightly different, but the main content is the same. I find a few friends, and friends change every time. They're walking on a trail through some woods when we come upon a field. The field is always empty and overgrown, and there are no other trails leading away from it. The only thing there, at the very far end of the field, is a strange thing that I always recognize as a ride, like the kind you'd find at an amusement park, and it's slightly tilted, like it's sunken into the ground. The basic shape is always the same. On top of a large circular platform surrounded by a fence. It's a relatively octopus-shaped thing. The head is what you'd expect. It's something pretty cutesy. Looks like plastic, the usual, but the tentacles are long, red, and fleshy, like they're alive. They're always perfectly positioned though, not moving or anything. Here's why I say it's something I recognize as a ride. It's not one, not really. There's nowhere to sit and nothing to hold on to. Just some stairs up this huge metal platform with this weird octopus. All of us are still happy right now. I haven't started being scared at this point. One by one, my friends start going up the stairs. I'm in the back of the line as the first person approaches the octopus. The tentacles move down and grab them, and the head opens up into a gaping maw, and they are dropped inside. There isn't normally any mouth on it. It just splits open. Even as this is happening, the rest of us aren't upset. I'm still going through this like it's normal. The same thing happens to everyone who goes up, but we're all still going excitedly. Now everyone's gone, and I reach the top. Finally, there's a start of a realization that something is very wrong. But it's always too late. The head morphs into a wildly deformed human head with a horrid, twisting mouth full of sharp teeth, and it smiles at me. And right before I'm dropped in, it says something in a deep voice that terrifies me. I never remember what it says. When it drops me, I'm surrounded by angry, hungry shrieks. This goes on for about 3 minutes before I wake up. It's really fucked up. I don't know why it keeps happening, but it scares the crap out of me every time, and I always wake up crying. I also have no clue why it takes me so long to realize something's wrong. It really helped to type this out. Thanks for reading. My pleasure. Really interesting one there.
Yeah. I'm getting a lot of, like a perversion of childhood innocence vibes, you know?
Okay.
It's got like the imagery of a theme park and things like that, you know, the things that are happy, you know, whenever you're a kid. But they're all somehow slightly wrong, you know, like they're fleshy and they're and just a little demented, a little evil sounding, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, I kind of get like this vibe that, you know, it's like there's this darkness just hidden under a coat of happy paint in childhood and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, my interpretation of it was actually very similar, or maybe a tangent off of that. So yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective. But I was thinking like they feel like they, you know, went off down this path and everything looked bright, including, you know, the future looked bright, and then maybe all of a sudden they realize, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be. And that was kind of the main vibe that I got, but that actually fits in perfectly with your interpretation of it being I mean, again, like maybe when you grow up you realize like, oh, like let's go back, like it was better when I was a kid. Yeah, I really like that actually.
I kind of have to wonder what it says that terrifies the writer so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. We'll never know. Well, unless they, you know, commented at some point. But
right.
Yeah, like, yeah, it could be anything. I love that. You want to read Nightmare 6?
Okay, I'm on it. Nightmare 6, sent to us by Peace Control Rat. Has anyone else had this nightmare? So in my nightmare, I was sleeping in my bed, and next to me there was another bed with someone I cared about a lot. And she said, "Look behind you." And I turned around and saw a ghost-like demon figure, and I was trying to scream in my head, or in my dream, but it felt like the life was being sucked out of me. I woke up, but I was terrified to turn around, so I covered my face with the blanket. And I was sweating like I just ran a lap or something. And once I gathered enough courage, I walked towards the light switch with my blanket covering my eyes. And by the way my room has no windows and is pretty small, so it was pitch black. But I had my back turned to a corner of my room, and I felt something watching me. But when I turned the light on, I opened the door and went to my sister's room to sleep in her bed, because I was terrified to sleep in my room alone again. And by the way, this was today at about 6 or 7.
I mean, that sounds like sleep paralysis to me.
It does. Now, they said that they were sleeping in a bed, and next to them there was someone they care about in a different bed. Was that a person that that was actually there, or is that something that they were dreaming? I wonder.
I don't know. I mean, it feels like it could be either and still be sleep paralysis. You can actually, one of the most common sleep paralysis demons is literally just a family member coming into your room, and it actually doesn't scare you at all because you don't realize it's a hallucination.
Oh, holy cow! I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really yeah, quite interesting. So yeah, like I have no idea whether or not it was yeah, like real or not, but that's an interesting thought there. I'm going to pick up my pace a little bit and start number 7 because I had hoped to get through 15 in total by the end of tonight. So,
all right, let's go.
This is a post by a user named So Tired Doug. I think I'm saying that relatively correctly. The post is titled, "Had the worst nightmare of my life last night." The post reads, "It was an old high school friend. Still keep in touch rarely. He was down and depressed and living in a bunker for some reason. He kept trying to commit suicide, and I kept waking myself up by screaming, 'Don't do that,' or 'Stop.' Eventually, he left the bunker, and I followed him, asking what he's gonna do. He started cutting himself and said, 'I'm gonna rub shit on me until the infection kills me.' While he did this, I could hear the sound of static, like looking at the Slender Man in a video game. Everything started to shake and vibrate, and he started to morph into a younger version of him, while I stared in horror. I felt helpless and was crying and screaming myself to wake up again. Every time I would go back to sleep, I would go back to the same thing. After the last time, he had turned into a cat. He could still talk. We walked around while I carried him in this gloomy field that was turning into houses. Only there was a couple people still being worked on. It was a big construction site. I saw a 100-year-old house that my family was gathering in. Old farmhouse, run down with a mix of nice and creepy things. My buddy was still a cat, and we just sat there and talked a while watching the family. I woke up in sweat and shock, got to work and really wanted to cry. Still can't stop thinking about it, and I still want to cry. It was pure horror for me. I've had many fucked up dreams lately, but this one takes the cake." So, I have actually something about this. I've done this basic research on the internet for what certain themes in nightmares represent, and I compiled these on what I call my dream chart. So I actually have one for suicide. I know I'm hitting like all the YouTube trigger words, but I always do, so whatever. So suicide, yeah, suicide of someone you know could indicate a feeling of guilt about them somehow. Suicide of a parent could mean big changes. So I guess this is, in this case, yeah, it would most likely correlate to you feel guilty about your relationship with them in some regard. That's how. I don't know what it means that they turn into a cat at the end.
Yeah, that is a little weird one. And a younger version of themselves earlier on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be. I wonder if it's related to the way in which they feel guilty about their friend.
That's a good question.
But anyway, in the spirit of moving on briskly, would you like to read Nightmare 8?
Let's do it. This nightmare was written by Maboilo, and it is titled Reoccurring Nightmare I've Had for Years. This is a nightmare I still have sometimes. It's not very scary objectively, but it makes me feel visceral fear every time. The beginning is not very clear. All I remember is that I'm in a house, and for some reason I have to go downstairs. It's not always in the same house. Sometimes it's my childhood home, sometimes it's where I lived when I was a teenager, sometimes it's an unknown place. But there are always stairs that I must take to go to some kind of basement area. The basement is always either dark or dimly lit. In the darkness, I begin to feel afraid. I find the light switch and desperately try to turn the lights on. Nothing happens, and I panic. That's when I feel a presence. I don't know how, but I feel like I'm not alone in there. And to confirm my suspicions, whatever is in the room begins moving by itself. In one occurrence, it was a bed sliding across the floor. In another, it was tools flying about. There is never a ghostly figure. It is only implied to be there, which I find even scarier. When I have this dream, I always wake up in a sweat and with goosebumps. I don't know why it terrifies me so much. I actually have a theory, but it does. I've encountered a nightmare a little like this on a couple of different occasions. For me, it's always the start of a sleep paralysis. I always remember having a nightmare where I'm somewhere and I feel a presence, and it's always somewhere dark, and it always ends up being something like I feel it grabbing on and just kind of binding until I can't move, and that's when I become full conscious and I find myself incapable of moving. So I find a lot of parallels there, like, needing to go downstairs or needing to go into a dark room and then feeling that something's in there with you.
You have sleep paralysis?
I've had it once or twice. It's not very frequent.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like I don't, I'm not sure how I feel about this one. Like, yeah, I wouldn't know that it was the start, or the start of sleep paralysis. It seems like a nightmare to me. Yeah, just like a regular nightmare. I don't know. I might just stick with your feelings about it. And here we have a short one from a user named Barry Twisted, and the post is titled "Reoccurring Demon Nightmare." The post reads, "I keep having this nightmare that I'm laying in bed asleep, and I am in my body, but can also see around the room, even though I'm facing a wall. As I'm sleeping, a long, pale arm reaches out of my closet. The fingers are also long, bony, and pale. The arm grabs the back of my pajama shorts and rips me off the bed. When I turn back to look, as it's dragging me into the closet, I can see red eyes. Then I wake up." Okay.
That is, yeah.
So this is, I think, in my opinion, this is definitely sleep paralysis. So there's this one sleep paralysis demon that I've also heard is fairly common, and basically it's referred to as the cuddler. And basically you don't ever see it, but you'll feel it behind you. If you sleep on your side, this is one that you'll get, because you can't really see across the corner of the room. And the thing about sleep paralysis is your hypnagogic hallucinations can affect any of your senses, and that includes kinesthetic. So I've spoken with individuals who have sleep paralysis where it's felt like they've been picked up and strangled by their demon, and this type of thing. Like dragged out of bed. And red eyes is also really common for a sleep paralysis demon. But yeah, this gives me those vibes, like the feeling of being dragged out of bed. Kind of the start of it reminds me of the cuddler. Also, yeah, some people will report seeing the cuddler's arm, and it is often skeletal, as this person describes it being long, bony, and pale, kind of. Yeah, these are from Reddit Nightmares, by the way. And yeah, this is what. Yeah, I think that this is a sleep paralysis for sure.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of the cuddler, but he sounds like a scary guy.
Yeah.
For having such a innocuous name, he sounds like a scary guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good cuddle. It doesn't feel good.
No.
They say he's cold. Yeah, he's supposed to actually feel cold. But would you like to?
That's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to read?
I'm on it.
Perfect.
Okay, so number 10 comes from Funky Bastard, and he says, "Dreamt of being followed and stalked. Detailed dream." So, I was at home, wanted some salmon from the fridge, so I asked my brother for it. He was reluctant because I think he wanted to make something later, but gave me anyways. He said something like, the biggest issue in this family is we don't plan our meals. It was getting dark outside, almost like it was winter. There was a white van outside of the house. There is currently a white van outside of our house in real life. On my way to mom's place, I was at dad's place. Van outside is outside of our dad's house. And on my way there, I saw the van in traffic. Then, when I arrived at my mom's place, I was sitting in the back seat and no one was driving. Not sure how I got there, but I see a van again parked by the school next to the apartment complex. I see an overweight man in a blue shirt and beige pants step out and go to the school. It was dark by then, and I don't know what time or what day it was, but I thought maybe I was just being paranoid and it was just the same day, or going just the same way. I hurry into the apartment. The thingy outside where you type in the code does not work, so I use my keys. I hurry upstairs and unlock the door to my apartment and lock it as soon as I get inside, and feel like I've made it. And then I think back to the car. I'm in the car and I see Dad and his son step out of the school from a distance, and behind them, the overweight man from the van. He just stands there and looks right at me and smiles in an uncomfortable way, like he knows I'm caught. I panic a bit and look down at my phone, and I'm on Reddit. I had apparently commented something that had -2 votes. Someone asked on Ask Reddit, what's best to do at night, and I wrote something about crime. One person commented and asked for an update. Had to reread the comment 2 times because I didn't understand what they meant, but started writing that I think someone is stalking me, and then I wake up. I was uncomfortable when I woke up, and heart beating a bit faster, so thought it must be why it's a nightmare, but I'm not sure. I was very creeped out in the dream.
I mean, I had a bit of a smile at the fact that part of their nightmare is commenting something and receiving -2 downvotes. I've been there. I can empathize with that feeling.
Specific on a lot of things.
Yeah, weirdly specific.
Yeah, because they mentioned they asked for salmon from the brother, and they mentioned just like all these little things where I was like, I can't imagine dreaming this specifically. Like I can't. Like getting -2 votes really hit me too. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. But I feel like overall it could be as simple as just wondering what's going on with that van parked outside your house in real life. Like that could really,
right.
Yeah, that could be the simple reason for why they're having this nightmare. Just worried about what's going on with that.
Right.
Yeah. But another little tip though for anyone interested in remembering more details of their nightmare, because this was a very detailed one, is to start a dream journal, actually. So the more you force yourself to recall, like as soon as you wake up, if you write down your dreams and you keep doing that consistently, whether it's a dream or a nightmare, your brain will start to, this is also, by the way, how you train your brain to start lucid dreaming, is you kind of get used to the idea of your dreams as being a narrative, and a good way to do that is to just start writing them down whenever you remember them, and writing them down in as much detail as you possibly can, and then pushing the boundaries of how much detail you're able to recall. And in doing so, you'll actually develop deeper, like richer, more fantastical dreams filled with details. Just wanted to throw that out there. But now sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's an exciting thing, just, trying not to wander into nightmare territory.
Yeah. And this is a post by a user named Christian189CS. The post is titled, "Hi, please help." The post reads, "I had this dream where I was in my kitchen, surrounded by everyone I love, family, friends, crush, etc., and I started crying blood. Everyone surrounded me and began to complain about the mess I was making on the floor, which made me cry even more blood. Each time I cried blood heavier, they yelled louder. Each time they yelled louder, I cried blood heavier. I tried to explain that the more they yell, the bigger the mess, and I couldn't yell loud enough for how loud they all were. It didn't stop until all I saw was red.
Ooh, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the
I'm
interpretation...
kind of getting like a...
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you please.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I'm getting some vibes from this that the person's trying to please their family and their loved ones, but like their efforts just either keep falling short, or like they keep being misinterpreted. You know, like their intent keep getting misinterpreted, misunderstood, and so they just the crying is just, you know, them lamenting that their efforts and their intentions aren't being recognized for what they are, but just rather being seen as a big mess.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, and I would also add to it, like blood in a nightmare has, like if you actually like Google what it means, nobody really knows what it means because it's just such a, it applies in so many situations, but one of the most common threads I see is that it's just about emotion in general, like blood. I would say that this person, I wouldn't be surprised, well, let me say this, if they have often like a lot of mood swings or something like that, or maybe they're just not used, they don't like emotionally regulate well, and then they get criticized for that by their family, which makes them mood swing harder. You know, I've known people like that who just have that kind of negative feedback loop in their life with people who are in their immediate vicinity. Nightmare 12.
Okay. Nightmare 12 comes from Odd Criticism 2182. It's titled, "The Most Creepiest Dream I've Ever Had. Does it mean anything, or is it just a classic nightmare?" They write, "My mom passed away 25 years ago. I had a dream I went to go presently visit her in the mortuary. She was under a blanket, and the guy lifted up the blanket, and she was still in almost perfect condition because they put some kind of special plastic on her skin and fake eyes, and she still had her natural hair. He told me not to touch her or else she might come apart. And she was moving her head around, and I was worried her head was going to fall off. She was still able to kind of talk, but it was a slower kind of talk. But I was commenting on how beautiful she was, and she was so happy. I went to take a picture of her with my camera, and the picture came out a demonic clown with black eyes. The guy at the mortuary started laughing at me. That's all I remember, but damn, it was so messed up." I agree with that one. That was kind of messed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in terms of meaning, I think I have some stuff from the internet on this type of situation. So seeing a dead people that you know, that you don't know, indicates anxiety about a personal illness, so this would not apply in this case. Seeing a dead person that you know can indicate a struggle with grief. So that's one possibility. And they did mention that their mother passed away 25 years ago. But of course, if it's your mother, you know, there's no really, like, you can't really expect any sort of time limit on the grief in that case. Seeing someone who's... And then the last case doesn't really apply either. So it's probably to do with grief, I would say. And I guess I probably didn't have to read something from the internet to figure that out, but yeah. In terms of like how she's reacting, I don't know, it could just be concern for her in the afterlife, something of that nature. Concern for her well-being. The fact that the guy's laughing at you, not really sure what to make of that.
Maybe this is kind of a situation where their grief has been, I don't want to say like ridiculed, but maybe undermined, like maybe it carries on for a little longer than it should, and people just kind of keep telling you, well, you should get over it. to the point where it almost feels like you're silly for carrying it for as long as you do.
That's a good insight. Yeah, good thinking. All right. So this is a post by a user named JazzLikePlankton45. The post is titled, Dream of Dead Kittens. The post reads, In my dream, I went with my friend to collect drugs. I didn't want to go. They were drugs that she bought. We then had to go to this nearby house for some reason, only to find out that bad people were about to come into the house and try to hurt us. There were a litter of kittens sleeping in a towel on the radiator in one room, with the mother cat next to them. I was scared that the bad people would kill the cats, so I put the mother cat outside through a window. I then picked up the kittens and hid them in a drawer. I was worried that they would meow and give their position away. When the bad people came into the house, I hide away from the kittens, and my friend stays with them. When the bad people leave, I go to the room and open the drawer and find all the kittens dead. They died in different ways, with some of their heads squished. I then think of what I would have done to save them if I had been hiding with the kittens. I decided I would have pretended to go crazy, and that I wanted to keep the kittens to kill for myself, in hopes that the bad people would be freaked out and leave me and the kittens alone. I was really upset about the death of the kittens. Any tips on the meaning? So, first thought is that it's about the destruction of innocence and your inability to protect the innocent. The kittens could also represent the environment. I've seen over the last 6 months I've been doing this, a lot of people will often have dreams about being unable to protect the environment. It's like a chief concern for many, of course. And so, yeah, they just feel helpless in their ability to, protect the environment, protect what they see as being the innocent. And then another thing that I would say that is now just slipped from the top of my head.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, is that you're beating yourself up. So for whatever the situation is, whatever the nightmare represents, you're beating yourself up about it because you're trying to think of, oh no, like this bad outcome occurred, like what could I have done differently? And you kind of are obsessing over that. So that could really relate to almost anything in your life. Like it could be, a breakup that's kind of common to do after, what could I have done differently? Maybe it could be like the death of a family member. Although in that case, usually it's easier to understand that there was less that you could have done. But yeah, it could have any, and it could again be involved in protection of the innocent.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I really do feel like that pretty much nails it.
All right. And so, nightmare number 14. We actually suddenly went way faster than I was expecting, but that's fine too. Yeah.
All right. Number 14 comes from Green Salt Media, and it's titled 911. Last night, I had a nightmare where my friends and I were hanging out at my apartment. My uncle was there too. Suddenly, we all looked out of my window and I saw a plane spiraling out of control in the air, doing loop-de-loops and all sorts of crazy shit. My instincts kick in and I start to freak out. My uncle scolds me for being a pussy and telling me to relax. Suddenly, the plane makes a beeline for my apartment complex and crashes into the wall. The wall is still somehow intact, but the wall is now severely damaged and the window is blown out. I can tell that the building is about to collapse. I look to my uncle and friends who are unconscious beneath a bunch of random debris in the middle of the living room. I quickly grab my cat and force her into her kennel. I nervously stepped outside of the front door and away from the building. I then attempt to call 911. The phone stops ringing. I try again, 911, no pickup, no response. I keep dialing 911 over and over and over again, trying to get some help from my friends and family. Nobody picks up. Every time I dial, I scream out the numbers 911 repeatedly. And that's when I jolted awake in my bed, my cat lying peacefully beside me. I immediately checked my phone out of instinct, This time was 9:11 a.m. No shit. No idea what it means or how I knew the time. Could it just be a giant coincidence?
So a lot of the people in the comments were saying, yeah, it was a coincidence, 100%. I actually am going to, I'm going to take the devil's advocate side here. I don't think it was a coincidence because your brain, like, I don't know if you've ever done this, but like, if you, are getting up at a certain time every day and then you don't have your alarm on, you'll still get up at that time. Like if you've been doing that for long enough, like your brain's internal clock is very like sensitive and precise, and it knows what's going on. Like it knows what time it is pretty much all the time. Maybe for some people more than others, but I wouldn't be surprised if your brain knew that the time was 9/11 and that was part of what worked it into this nightmare. Again, it could be a coincidence though because the rest of the nightmare doesn't have anything to do with it. But yeah,
Right.
I wanted to put that forward as a possibility. I like how it's written. It definitely makes me chuckle, especially like the first paragraph. Yeah, I mean, and again, like this is, I would say, a case ultimately of feeling like you're just unable to help. It's a feeling of helplessness. That's what the nightmare
Yes.
is boiling down to. And this is, I think, one of the most common themes in my nightmares actually is when I have family members that are dying in some horrible way and there's literally nothing I can do to help them.
Yeah, it's a terrifying thing, and I was getting that from what they were saying a lot, especially since they keep trying to call 911, but every time it just cuts off. No answer. So I do get that vibe of helplessness from it.
Mm-hmm. And since I was planning to go a little longer than this anyway, and we only got one left that I'll read, but I'll share briefly just this nightmare that I once had that was kind of similar to this in terms of the feeling of helplessness at being able to help your family members. So this was actually a nightmare that I had that recurred a few times over the course of several years, and I called it the Five because it would always involve my family would be at some gathering, and we would be just like hanging out, like a Christmas dinner or a Thanksgiving dinner or something of that nature. And it would be my immediate family, my extended family, and everybody would be packed in there. And for some reason, the nightmare always started with me kind of sulking off in another room, which I often did at large family gatherings when I was a kid, for whatever reason. And then
I'm the same.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the horror narrators had a similar childhood, maybe. But the phone would ring, and it was a landline because I grew up in the 90s. And basically, I would pick up the phone, and there would be this deep voice that was somewhat distorted, and it would say, "The Five are coming." And then everything went silent. And then all the windows smashed, and these like SWAT guys, and I couldn't see their faces, they would just come in and start shooting everybody and like stabbing everybody.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like the dream always ended with me, like I couldn't even tell if I was the last to be murdered because it was just complete chaos, like immediately after one brief moment of complete still. And yeah, that was like I had that nightmare like 2 or 3 times. So I definitely relate to this feeling of helplessness, I would say, in a nightmare when your family needs help and you're not able to do anything. I wasn't in that dream that I had. I wasn't even able to. I didn't have time to figure out what was going on, let alone call 911 before I was getting murdered myself. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Holy cow.
You ever had anything like that?
A feeling of helplessness in a dream? Not really. I guess the only time that would come just sort of close would be like the dream that you read earlier, where he's in a dark room and there's presence there. And I mentioned sleep paralysis because it's usually how it starts for me, and it's always just kind of this really oppressive feeling inside of dark room, and I always feel like my body starts to fail. Like my arms just all of a sudden I can't hold them up; they just kind of drop, and I can't walk. It feels almost like I'm in very deep mud up to my waist, and just this very slow feeling of all of a sudden you're trapped inside of your own body. You can't move, and you can't even speak. I remember very, very vividly that's something that comes, that it's like I'm trying to say something, trying to call for help, trying to scream, and I can't, because all of a sudden even my ability to talk is gone. It's just I'm aware, but everything else is shut down. And I'll usually come out of the dream and just be stuck in that position where it's like you can't move no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So that's about the most helpless that I've felt in dreams before. And usually, like, if you give it enough time, you eventually come out of it. So it's it's become kind of a practice of mine that whenever I start to feel that, immediately I start telling myself it'll be over soon, it'll be over soon, it'll be over soon, and eventually it is over. So it's just like a very passing, very fleeting feeling.
Mm-hmm. I've had that too, where I'm running and my feet just, like, it feels like I'm just getting picked up gradually, and my feet touch the ground less and less. It just feels like you're not getting any traction. Welcome to those just joining us in the chat. There's one more nightmare that I wanted to read, and it comes from Siddad, who sent me several nightmares before. And it came as an email last week, but I saved it till this week because I had plenty already to read last week. But again, this is an email viewer submission from Siddad. And the title of the nightmare is Game Master Bunny and the Bush Demon. The email reads, "This dream was one I had a long time ago. The dream outside during the night, outside my home. My house on a hill surrounded by large fields. I was walking up the hill when I reached the top. I was alone, by myself. In front of me was a bridge, a narrow wooden bridge that led to outside my home. My house has no bridges, so again, I didn't know why there was such a thing. Anyways, I walked up on the bridge, looking to return home. As I was walking on the bridge, I felt someone stare at me. To my side, very faintly, I thought I saw movement. I continued walking, thinking that it was nothing, but I saw it again. I turned to my side, and inside a large bush, I see eyes, blue eyes, staring at me with a sharp, wide smile. The creature was frail and bent over. It had large black hair and had incredibly long nails. I kept walking down the bridge, and the creature kept pace with me, moving sharply from bush to bush. I began to panic and walk faster and faster as it would keep pace with me. Finally, I reached the end of the bridge and began running towards my house. I ran as fast as I could, and it ran fast. It nearly caught me before I opened my front door and shut it closed, locking it. I breathed heavily as I turned around to see my family seated, staring at me confused. They wondered what was wrong with me. I told them what I saw, a weird creature. They told me not to worry, and there was nothing there, but I insisted. In my house, we have cameras installed to prove to me there was nothing there, and we looked at the TV, which had a live feed on it. Indeed, nothing was there, and I began to wonder if I was hallucinating. I apologized to them and began to pick up the courage to go outside again. I opened my door and inched out of it, barely moving away from it. I stared near the bridge. I saw those same eyes again, staring at me with wide blue eyes, his sharp teeth baring with a smile. His long nails poked out of the bush. I panicked immediately and rushed back inside. My family looked at me as if I was crazy, but I continued to insist. Eventually, my uncle said he will come with me to look. He brought a large stick with him, and we both went outside. There was nothing. We came closer and closer to the bridge, and still the creature was not there. Then we turned behind us, and there was a small elephant floating in circles, surrounded by some weird purple bluish aura. It didn't look like a normal elephant, but I could tell it was one. The elephant didn't do anything, and we looked away from the elephant to see the dark-haired creature again staring, and approached. We ran back immediately and locked the doors. What I saw was real, and my uncle saw it as well. He confirmed it to my family, and we began to panic, and we locked all the doors and closed the blinds. We sat there for a while before we heard a bang on the door of someone trying to break in. The door broke open. Coming in it was a rabbit or bunny. He stood up like a man. He was tall and frail, and worse, wore a red vest. He had a disturbing smile on his face before he grabbed me, trying to take me with him. We began to panic, but he assured me that my family wouldn't be hurt, and all they need is me. He commands me to follow as he jumps from hill to hill somewhere. I follow, and eventually we end up at a building. The building was very small and square. He tells me to enter, and so I do. He tells me that I must solve a puzzle and advance, or else I will die, and my family will not be saved. The puzzle was on the wall. It was a combination of numbers and something else that I don't remember. I tried to unlock it for hours, and I could not do it. Eventually, I turned to the bald man and ask him for help. He looks at me and does not speak. I continue to call him, but he does not speak. For some reason, I entered the date of my birth, and the door began to unlock. I went inside, but then woke up. It's not complete, so I don't know what would have happened. I find that monster really creepy.
Yeah, same. The elephants just floating was what got me. I was like, oh, yeah, this is a lot of really weird image.
And the fact that they almost seem to be, it's almost like the creature planted the elephants in the sky as like a distraction so that he could sneak up on them. Because it's facing, they have to face away to see the elephants, and the creature's just sneaking up on them on the bridge.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about what it might mean?
Honestly, I was really hoping that you might give me some insight into this one, because that is a lot going on in that dream. I feel like they feel like they're being pursued. That's the thing that sticks out to me a lot. You know, like there's a creature there, and it's kind of like it's making their way slowly but surely toward them, kind of, planting distractions and that to just kind of draw attention away from itself. But I'm not sure what else to make of that.
All right. Well, I'm either going to blow your mind here, or you're going to think I'm an idiot. But I think this is a coronavirus nightmare.
Really?
Yeah, because his family is trapped inside. There's a suddenly there's a bridge to his house that he doesn't recognize on a hill. So this could be like the start of the pandemic or something like that. The monster that, at first, he was the only one that saw it, and then maybe more people in his family are like, oh yeah, this is like a problem. Kind of like the gradual understanding in the community that there's a threat. I don't know, maybe I'm pushing it a little too far, but and then just the fact that they have to be locked inside and shut away from it, and that it's kind of threatening his family if he doesn't remain in isolation. Has some puzzle to solve. I'm not sure what that would be. I don't know if he's directly involved in trying to cure the virus or something like that. Probably not, but I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching there.
Actually, whenever you frame it in that way, I'm actually thinking that you might be onto something there. So, yeah, I consider my mind blown. I've never been able to think of the connection there, but I see it.
Mm-hmm. In the chat, there's a comment, they are being challenged. Yeah, they're being challenged. I'm not sure what the challenge would represent. And again, it is kind of a similar situation of there's an element of wanting to protect your family, which could be anything, but it could also be, that also fits into my idea that it's a corona nightmare. I don't know. Yeah,
I can see that. I can 100% see that now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess it's because a lot of what was going on in the nightmare seems so abstract, so off the wall that in my head I'm like, I don't know. That just seems like so much happening at once. It could be literally anything. But the thing is, this is kind of an unprecedented situation that we're in because of the coronavirus. So that it could absolutely show up in your mind as something just completely nonsensical, because this is not something that you could have ever pictured yourself being stuck in, you know. And a lot of the times, a lot of the situations that arise because of it seem kind of outlandish, kind of silly, you know, so such that I can absolutely see this fit that mold perfectly.
Well, I mean, that is all the nightmares that I wanted to read tonight. Thanks for everyone to come out. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun too, Serafin.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
again, I would encourage everyone watching, if you haven't already, to check out Serafin's channel. He does, he just, you have to check out at least even just one of his videos. Like, it's just so amazing the way he creates the mood even before he gets into the stories he's telling. I just really recommend you check it out. And as for me, I post, I'll be here every Sunday night reading nightmares. I hope to have more guests on in the future. By the way, thank you for 200 subscribers. I hit that earlier this week. And also on Thursdays, I write my own creepypastas, and I post one every Thursday, so you can check those out. Right now, I've been going through a bunch of folklore monsters and gods, and I think that I'll continue doing that for the time being. And then eventually I hope to even do like an e-novel on some like sleep paralysis demons. It'll be kind of like, I don't know, kind of anime inspired. I hope that it has like an anime feel to it. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point. But yeah, if you have nightmares that you'd like me to read next week, feel free to send them as an email to theforgottengrove@gmail.com. I take viewer submissions as well as read from Reddit. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties this week. It was my first time with a guest, but I hope you all had fun. And I had a lot of fun, I know that. So,
Yeah,
once
same.
again,
I had a blast.
excellent. So, yeah, goodbye from me, and goodbye from Serafin, and I'll see you.
Adios.
Yeah, and I'll see you in the next one.